Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I am speaking to you from the verse. Now if you're not sure what the verse is, I invite you to go to my website at rewritingtheverse.com, and that's where you can find out all about the verse. There are several written updates on there and all the YouTube videos are on there as well. So I encourage you to go visit that. I am a past life regressionist and rewriter, and what that means is when I'm done reviewing a past life regression, I do have the ability to go in and rewrite the outcome to a higher level. And I've been guided to utilize this channel as a way to help us move through various portals, especially utilizing my past life regression abilities, and right now really utilizing twin flame and divine masculine, divine feminine timelines to help us do that. This particular video is directly connected to this upcoming 7/7/2020 portal. So July 7th, 2020, there's another major portal, once again another ascension gate, and I've been guided to once again do another timeline on this. I have already completed the past life regression. I'll spell it out on this video exactly what happened, but I have not formally put in place the rewrite yet. It's been my experience that it seems much more powerful to do live here with you, so that we can both find out together how this is going to shift not only the people's lives in the particular timeline, but they usually impact the planet and possibly even beyond at some level. So it can be very exciting to see what unfolds at the end. I encourage you to stick around for that. After I record this video, there will be a short follow-up video that'll just talk about pretty much the highlights of what we figure out at the end of the video, what it is that, again, the major breakthroughs are, understandings are, and so I will attach that link at the bottom as well. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I do is I ask my guides to tell me approximately how far in the past we're looking at. And this particular regression is approximately 800 years ago, so 1200 AD. I was also told that this is happening somewhere over in France at that time. And the very first image I see is a woman, and I'll tell you how she was dressed. She had like a dark brown, I'm going to say it might have even been made out of wool, some sort of heavier fabric dress on. And the other major item that she wore was a bonnet, a light colored bonnet that had a very long, I don't know what that front part of the bonnet is that sticks out, but whatever that part is called, it was very long and came down here, so it really covered her face quite a bit. She was also carrying a basket that was a fairly large round basket. Wasn't overly deep, but it was large, and she was carrying some sort of grain, I believe. It was either, I'm going to say wheat, barley, or oats. I kind of got oats was a strong or a common grain that she was connected to, but I think all of those were possible things that she would be carrying. And so she carried the, because of its size and the handles were kind of on the outside of it, she would hold it off to the side on one of her sides and carry it like that as she walked through this little town streets. It was definitely semi-muddy in the street there, maybe a rain earlier in the day or something, but it wasn't raining at that time. And this apparently was just what she regularly did. She would carry grain back and forth from somewhere, and she was in a hurry. She was moving as quickly as she could, but I really got that it was an overly hot day, which doesn't mean it was like 100 plus, but if you're used to colder weather, whatever the case is, it was extremely hot for that time of year even. And she was struggling. I could see even under her bonnet, her face was flushed. Her cheeks were flushed, even her nose was flushed, pretty red. She was definitely breathing heavy, expiring profusely. It was like getting worse. As I could see her moving down the street and taking her right over here, I could see her struggling more and more, and could tell that there was something wrong at this point. This was not even a typical feeling that she normally had as she did this. It was clearly exhausting to her. She would have to stand for a few minutes, or at least a little bit, and take breaths, and before she kept going. And eventually what I saw is on one of the small road, next to the buildings, whatever, she finally did kind of trip, was able to kind of put down the basket as she fell. So at least, because everything, I mean, this was her livelihood is what I got. This was her job. So if she was to like totally spill all of that grain or whatever, that would have been a major loss pay-wise. So, save the grain. So as she's falling, losing actually consciousness is what was happening. It wasn't just that she tripped. She tripped because she was starting to lose focus and starting to faint from all this overheatedness. She was having some sort of it was either exhaustion, or heat exhaustion, or a heat stroke, something like that. It was getting pretty serious. So she actually did like faint. And then the next thing I see is she wakes up in a bed inside somebody's, was either a house or a building identified as a place for people to go when they were sick, because it did seem that the lady that was acting as the nurse in the room, like it really was where people that, like there was another bed in that room that would have been available for somebody else that was sick. So if it equated, maybe it was just her house or an actual building for things like this, that's where she woke up. She woke up and this nurse was in the room with her, tried to explain what happened and what was wrong with her. It wasn't anything too serious, but scary, and it could have been serious, I guess, if she had been any closer to either heat stroke or a severe heat stroke. And so name-wise, I'm going to call the lady we've been talking about so far, her name is Envy. Okay, we're just going to go with that because that's what I was given. So Envy was, I'm getting approximately 32 years old and single, and that this job was her only source of income. And she'd been doing this job for like since she was a teenager. And it's all she knew. The problem is, at 32, especially back then, it wasn't like being a teenager, or even early 20s, where you were physically fit enough to have a really physically rigorous job, okay? So she was able to manage that through the years, but she had noticed over maybe the last year or two that her body wasn't, performing as well as it had in the past, and she knew that her time doing this was limited. And being single and having no other resources, no other family or anything apparently to fall back on, this was scary. What would she possibly do now that she's even an old maid, like probably losing hope of ever getting married, right? 32 back then. But how on earth would she support herself if she didn't do that job? So that had been in the back of her mind for a while, and now here she is, in a bed. Clearly her body was letting her know that she's coming to the end of her ability to do this, and she's sharing this apparently with the nurse, that she's very concerned about this. And so what happens is the nurse, which I think this was a small enough town where they may have even at least vaguely known each other's, crossed each other in the street, but I don't get that they were necessarily close friends or anything either. So this was one of their first opportunities, I guess, to actually have any serious conversation. And hearing this concern of Envy's, the lady kind of looked at her and offered a possible solution. She said that she had gotten an offer, the nurse lady had gotten an offer maybe a few months before to come to a place to start over, and where basically like all her needs would be taken care of kind of thing. It was a very unique environment where she was invited to go. And she had thought about it, and she wanted to go. However, it was apparently required that you come in twos. So it didn't matter if male, female, married couple, whatever, it didn't matter. But for whatever reason, it was important that people came in twos. Because wherever they were going to go, it was like a self-sufficient kind of community, and for whatever reason, the number 2 seemed to help with that idea. So I can tell you, Envy was at first very skeptical of this, and again, she knew no other life, right? And it sounded rather risky to leave any kind of a job, even one that was killing you, to run off and go do something that even the lady that was inviting her hadn't really been there yet. She didn't know exactly what it was going to be like. She would be taking a risk too. So the seriousness of her health and knowing that her job can't continue the way it is was probably the only thing that, and her health, that had her, well, take the chance and agree to go with this lady. And so they gave each other a couple days to kind of figure out last things and maybe sell whatever they had, because it wasn't like she was going to be, not that she had much actually, but it wasn't like she could actually take like furniture and stuff like that with her. It needed to be just what she could carry pretty much. And they were going to be walking to the destination. So they did. A few days later, they left, and I'm getting it took approximately 3 days to get to the place. And what it was a small community that had grown just, I want to say it was maybe there less than 2 years, okay, a year to 2 years, where it had started with this small group of people, maybe about 30 or so, coming together, purposely setting up a little society amongst themselves where they contributed to each other, and ultimately there were enough resources for everybody and they could sustain it. And then over time, they invited in certain, whatever people, they could invite in a couple people at a time as it was ready to expand some more. So I get that this invitation even to this nurse was limited in time. If she had eventually shown up with somebody and herself, that offer wasn't going to last forever, because those opportunities needed to be filled. Again, it was a part of expanding and supporting the overall group. Okay? So they show up, and what basically I understood, whenever somebody came to the entry place, by the way, it's no longer like 30 people. I think it's closer to a couple hundred people at this point that are there, at least, maybe more, but at least that. Basically, they're asked to bring something with them. So, for instance, apparently, like within a few miles from there was some sort of maybe a general store or whatever that kept supplies that this colony, I'll call them maybe a colony now at 200 plus people, this colony would maybe have need of. Maybe some lumber, maybe some, well, food, chickens, you know, whatever. Things that, supplies that they would need could be purchased or traded for over at that store. So what they would ask is, could you please go to that store, and we kind of, they kind of keep track of what's needed. Okay, we have this project, we want to build this little structure. Okay, now we need wood. So people would know that wood would be on the list of things to bring with them, or maybe we need more eggs now. So if you buy a few chickens, bring those with you. It's kind of like you come in with some sort of gift in the beginning that's going to be shared amongst the community. And that's also a way for just, it's a part of the plan of supporting the community. And then once you're in, then it's more about contributing your time and your skills to the community. So for at least a couple hours a day, everybody would contribute in some way physically, whether it's going and getting water, whether it's cooking, chopping wood, whatever is in need. even if it's not fun work, but it's only maybe a couple hours worth of time out of the day, still leaves a lot of leisure time. So it's really the people pretty much are happy to do it. I mean, it also feels good to contribute sometimes. So it seems like this really neat, innovative idea to actually come into this group, and they're accepted in, and they, her and her nurse friend, they have a little like tent of their own that they bunk in. I get that it's kind of like the single women are over here, the single men are over there, and if you're in a couple situation, you're kind of all back in this other area. And so they have this little tent over here. And things go good right off the bat. It's actually a very positive community. Everybody's contributing. It really is running very smoothly. She's very happy with her choice to come here. And even though she didn't think she had anything to really offer the community, when she first got there and they're like, okay, what do you already know about? What are your skills already? And she said really the only thing she knew about was things related to farming, you know, the grains. And one of the things that hadn't really been developed yet in this colony was the agricultural part. If it had been developed, it wasn't very well developed. So they were actually very excited that she was there and had that level of expertise. And that's actually what her main thing was that she did there, was she helped with the planning and the plotting and the planting of crops. I do see 3 different fields with, I think, wheat, barley, and oats may be like the main staples for the community, and she's definitely organizing and making sure all of that's going swimmingly. Okay? So that's immediately kind of her niche, and she loves it. This is actually not just, it wasn't just work before. She really actually liked the farming part of her old job, not necessarily the carrying things for miles and whatever, but the farming part wasn't bad. So things start off really great, and she enjoys her work, and she just enjoys the community, and there is so much leisure time. Like, they're always having little festivities because they have the time to do it, and they're really in a pretty good mood overall. So it was a great little community to be a part of. Let me take a drink here. So everything was great at first. Until this group of young men, I'm going to say there was approximately 10 of them, came in and changed the energy of the place with their, I'll say, negative energy overall. I can see their little part of the camp. I can see them, they're kind of right in the middle of everything too, which means everybody kind of has to deal with their noise, has to deal with their attitudes, just very, you know, really the only requirement when you came to that place was to, you know, live peacefully with people, no violence or whatever, and then to contribute. That was a condition of being there, that you contribute at least a few hours a day, and everything would be great. Well, so these guys came in under that understanding, but the moment they were expected to go out and contribute in different ways, like I said, there's lots of different things they could have done. It was pretty clear that even that was asking too much of them. I can see them drinking at all hours of the day, sitting around in their camp just all, I don't know, I don't want to pigeonhole young men, but these are young men that, you know, maybe menace to society kind of guys. They may not be stealing from you, but they'll do pretty much everything else kind of thing. And so they really brought a negative vibe in, and they weren't contributing. It was very clear, very fast. Whatever they were doing in the beginning was starting to get down to very little or nothing. And it was being noticed by people. It was kind of an honor system that you were going to work, but it was pretty clear to everybody that they were not getting out there and doing things to contribute. So All right. I got that they were all these young men were family. So they were either a mixture, I believe, of brothers and cousins. So, but they're all family. And they all have, I would say, like darker hair. I would say they were from out of the area, basically, because the people in this area were much more fair complected. Kind of like Envy. She had very light skin, very light complected. She had blue eyes, whatever. And these men had, you know, some of the darker features. So they clearly weren't from around there anyway. But nobody really cared where people came from. Again, as long as you were being peaceful and contributing. Well, one of the things that happened fairly early after they got there was Envy, when she would need to go back to her tent for whatever reason, she would have to kind of walk by their camp. Just where it was located was very central and along the way to either out to the fields or back to her tent. And so she was harassed by them pretty regularly when she went by, mainly due to her apparent weight. She was certainly not a thin girl, but I mean, she wasn't huge either. She was, yes, a little overweight, and she always wore that bonnet thing that would pretty much cover most of her face. I mean, you could only see maybe that much of her if her head was down, especially, you know. But really, it was based on her body size that they would basically call her the equivalent of a cow or a heifer, right? Making even moo sounds as she went by sometimes. It's pretty much a given that if any of those, most of them saw her, they'd have some little nasty little thing like that to say. Which, you know, at some levels she was kind of used to. And she just tried not to let it bother her as she went by. Not to say it didn't bother her, but she tried not to let it. However, one of these young men caught her eye. Of course she would like a bad boy, right? Of course she would. Because where's our other twin flame? We've got her. She's one of the twin flames. Well, here's our other twin flame. And I'm going to call him Dash just because I got the word that she felt he was dashing. I thought, well, I'll just call him Dash for short. So, Envy and Dash. These are our two twin flames. And he just happened to be one of those brothers, right? But he never really did act the same way that his brothers did. Not to say he necessarily said anything in opposition to what they said and did, but he was more on the quiet side, more reserved, and it was clear that, you know, he wasn't, okay, the word respected. You know, if he spoke up in the group, he wasn't going to be heard the same as some of the other guys in it. So he was just kind of quiet and there. And out of all of them, he was actually the only one that even took initiative to go and contribute to the community. Nobody had to tell him to do it. He just did it on his own from pretty much when they got there. But he was like the only one that really did it regularly, where he would, choose to contribute to something. So this is how she actually gets a chance to really meet him. So like I said, she's pretty much the main person that kind of runs the three fields. And so she's out there a lot. There's a little covered area out there, so she's not baking in the sun. And anybody else that's out there, places to sit and drink water and relax when they're not in the field. And so she spends a lot of time out there, even by herself and when nobody else is. But the people have an option to come out and, you know, help plant, do whatever it is, harvest at the end, obviously, and everything in between. But she's out there most of the time. So when he came out to help out one day, it was no, surprise. There were other people that were either there or could come out. And she was happy for the help. Of course, she recognized him as one of that group. But she didn't really think too much of it at that point, and hey, he seemed actually eager to help. And she put him to work, and he was a really good worker, and he really seemed to put a lot of attention into what he was doing. Really wanted to do a good job, which seemed it was already becoming very clear to everybody that the rest of the brothers were just taking up space and draining the resources, while he was actually really contributing. And so this is how they finally actually got to know each other, would have conversations over time. Conversations would build, and they really genuinely enjoyed each other's company. He was intelligent, she was intelligent, and it really flowed, even though it was clear he was one of the more shy type of personality. With her, the conversations just flowed. So there was definitely a strong friendship beginning to develop there, if not actual other level of attraction. Now, of course, she could see his face and everything, and again thought he was dashing from the beginning, but he couldn't necessarily see hers fully. She always had that bonnet on, but she was a really nice person, and actually figure wise he wasn't under the same narrow-minded view as a lot of his brothers were, where they have to basically be skinny and starving to death, otherwise, they were considered a cow, right? No, he didn't mind what he saw at all. In fact, over time, she was getting a little bit more attractive to him. And then one day, she's already out there as usual, and he's kind of walking up the path. He's not saying anything yet, so she doesn't know he's walking up. And again, it's hot, so she takes off the bonnet and unbuttons just a few to kind of get a nice breeze coming through. But really, it was about taking the bonnet off just to get a little bit of air. Again, she had no idea that he was walking up behind her. And now he sees all this amazing, I won't say luscious, I guess this must be what he was there, luscious strawberry blonde hair coming down over her shoulders. And kind of sees the profile now. Starts to actually see more of her face now. And his heart stops. It was definitely a moment of, oh my gosh, she's gorgeous, right? That's exactly what he was thinking. Now she turns around, and oh my goodness, he's there, and she's caught without her bonnet on, right? So, but they have a moment, okay? It was just a split second, but have you ever had that moment where the eyes meet, right? And it seems like way longer than a second. They really saw each other in that moment. Well, maybe that's the only way I can explain it. For that split second, they really saw each other. And I'm not just talking physical beauty, right? But anyway, after she realizes he's there and they have that moment, she quickly, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, and she's turning around, totally embarrassed. Hurries up, puts her hair back up in, and puts that bonnet back up over her face. And of course, in his mind, he's like, don't do that. Don't do that. But did he say that? No. He didn't. He didn't indicate it, and he didn't say it. So, the rest of that afternoon, it went on however it went on. But things changed after that, right? I saw that both of them started to connect more, feel more about each other. The problem is that even though they both felt this way, he was kind of back and forth. You could tell, even she knew. This is twin flame energy, okay? At some level, both of them knew that the other was feeling something. Both of them were feeling whatever attraction towards each other that they were, but that doesn't mean that both of them were ready to express that, and he was not. So he starts getting not so consistent with coming out and helping her, So she went from, wow, this is, well, one, he was already getting to be a really good friend, but now after that, something was changing and he was pulling back. And now that she was also more aware of him, whenever she would have to walk by their camp again and they made those sounds, those noises, and called her a cow, he wasn't saying anything or even really acting like he really knew her. And if anything was hurting her feelings, it wasn't what they were saying, it was that. Acting like he had no interest in her, or that he was even like a friend to her at this point. So that's what would make her cry sometimes, actually, when she would walk by and see his, just, again, trying not to, it was total, okay, it was like, high school crap. Oh, you might be interested in that girl, but because your buddies over here won't approve of it, or they'll make fun of you, you're not willing to take the risk to go out and get to know that person. That kind of high school shit is what was happening. So this went on, I'm going to say at least 2 or 3 months, all right? Where it was kind of, he'd show up every once in a while, because remember, this is twin flame energy. He can't totally stay away from her, at least watch her from he definitely watched her from a distance a lot, when he didn't think anybody was watching. And eventually, sometimes he would go out there and help her out there, but it was so hot and cold, or actually never really got hot, let's just say that, lukewarm and cold. Either he acted like he didn't really know her and didn't really go out there at all, or if he did, it was kind of like friends, right? She knew that he felt more, I believe he knew that she felt more, but was not willing to express it. Okay. So that energy kept getting stronger and stronger, and her overall anger actually towards him was getting stronger and stronger. For just not manning up, right? So finally, one day, the overall community, the leaders of the community approached these young men. Now, they had been given warnings several times, a lot of slack actually, to get their act together and to start contributing and doing things, meeting the very bare minimum, and they hadn't done it. So, this is like the first time this has ever had to be done, where somebody's been kicked out of the community. So pretty much, everybody's kind of standing around looking and going, oh, what's going to happen? Especially because these guys are so kind of volatile. And so as these guys are grabbing their stuff and ranting and raving and, screw y'all, this place sucks, whatever. All right. The only one out of all of them that was actually offered the opportunity to stay was Dash. He had logged plenty of hours of contributing around the community, and he was actually given the option to stay. Now, of course, it wasn't just about staying to be a part of the community. And his thought process is, if he gets kicked out of here, he's not going to be able to see Envy anymore, right? And he doesn't want that to happen. But these are his brothers, his family, and, he's still concerned with what they think, really. And she's watching this and watching them, and they're ranting and watching, knowing that he's having to make this choice. And he does actually glance over at her before he finally decides that he's going to go with his brothers. Starts packing his stuff and walks out with the rest of them, which breaks her heart. Breaks her heart that he made that choice. Again, knowing full well how much he felt. Even if he didn't say it, she knew it. And, the twin flame piece, she felt it and believed that that was it. She was never going to see him again. So that whole rest of the day, she was going through her emotions about this. Okay, so later on that night, it's after dark. People are still awake though, so it's not super late at night. Dash comes running into the community. He just runs right in and runs straight to where she's at. And when she saw him coming in for a brief moment, she was excited. Thought, oh my God, did he actually finally, man up and decide to do what was right for him instead of right for his brothers? But that was quickly dashed. Interesting. He ran up and started saying, I'm sorry. I tried to stop them. All they did was sit around all day and drink and hate on this place, and now they're about to torch the fields to get back at everybody. So all of a sudden now it's not just, maybe some fear in there, but just absolute anger. Not only is her creation about to be destroyed, but all of her anger towards him and his inability to step up and, in her opinion, do what was right, as she starts to move and want to run towards the fields to see if what he's saying is true, he grabs her arm like, no, don't go, like you might get hurt or something. And the moment he grabbed her arm, she turned around and, now I'm pretty sure she said freaking, but she said, you let go of me, you freaking coward. And with so much anger in her eyes and her voice, and in that moment, this is where they get stuck. In that moment, she absolutely believed he was a coward. And in that moment, he took it on that he was as well. I'm not saying that he really was, but he believed it, and in that moment, she believed it. The problem with beliefs, especially in those moments where you get stuck, is those beliefs will follow you through time and space. These two souls, they've been stuck in this scenario of seeing each other this way for 800 years. And they will continue to see each other this way until we heal this. So that is where they get stuck. And when she pulls away from him and runs towards the fields, he knows there's nothing more he can say that could salvage in any way the situation, and he slinks out and goes wherever he goes. And sure enough, she gets to the edge of it's actually a grove of trees that the like living structures and things are in, and then the fields are right outside of the grove of trees. And sure enough, she can see these torches over there, and all three of them are lit up. And it's not just about the fields burning. You have to realize that the fields come pretty much right up to the grove of trees, which means it threatens actually the camp itself. And she's clearly not going to be able to stop it from burning. It's dry. I mean, now all she can do is turn around, basically yell, like fire, and try to get everybody to actually evacuate the colony outside, at least the trees, because the fire does sweep through the trees and they lose everything. It totally burns the colony and its ideals to the ground. So I want to say something like, you know, it only takes one bad seed, right? Or one, what is it, one bad apple to spoil the bunch or whatever. That's an important concept in any group dynamic, and we'll see how this unfolds, but let's hope we figure out a way to stop that kind of thing from happening back then, and we figure that out here, then maybe we can have that transferred to other groups. But for right now, yeah, that's how that timeline ends up. They're all homeless. Over 200 people are homeless. And if there were any attempts to recreate it later, it was nothing like it was. And in the midst of all that, a twin flames come burning down too. So that is the first version. I'm going to take a drink and then we will explore the rewrite. I have been given some guidance as to where exactly to look at, but once we start it, your guess is as good as mine as far as how it unfolds and impacts the overall storyline. So one more drink of water. All right. So they've guided me to go back to the part where they're out there on the other side of the fields when he walks up and she lets her hair down. That's actually the point that they're asking me to go back and look at. So once again, the same situation. He's walking up, yes, the hair goes down, and he's totally like infatuated immediately and thinks she's beautiful immediately. Once he sees the whole package, wow. And when she turns around and realizes he's there, again, they have that moment. It's that moment, like I said, where time freezes for a moment. And then when she finally kind of comes out of that, she scrambles to put her bonnet back on. Now this was not, okay, I'm supposed to clarify, this is not like a community or a region of the world where the bonnet had to be worn by women. Women walked around without anything on their heads a lot. This was purely her thing. She wore it all the time, and not just out of necessity of being in the sun. She wore it because she was ashamed of how she looked. I don't know so much the hair, but definitely, well, one of her features, again, she was a little overweight, but even just her facial features were very round and plump. Let's just say that. So the rosy, plump cheeks, plump little nose, whatever, you know, she was ashamed of how she looked. She wasn't like hideous or had some major malformality. She just, at some point in her life, she decided that she had to hide herself. And really hiding herself, not just visibly, but like to shrink her energy and just try not to be seen. So she was just seen by a guy that she finds very attractive. And so she's like so shocked and oh my goodness, and scrambling to try to get the bonnet, and you know, and okay. In the first version, we know he thought she was beautiful. He didn't say anything or do anything to let her know that. And that's actually what has to change. That's what will change the trajectory of the story somehow. So now from this point on, you and I are in the same boat. We don't know what's going to happen, and I'll tell you what I see as it shows itself. So this time when she's scrambling to put her bonnet on, he's like, no, don't. And I think it was probably because he didn't have time to really think it out. He just blurted out, "No, you're beautiful." He actually says it, okay? Doesn't even just go, you know, "I think you're cute." He actually comes right out and says that he finds her beautiful. Which, now that he said it, now let's see how this unfolds and how she reacts and everything. Because one, I get immediately, he's like, "Oh my God, I told her she was beautiful." I can't believe he just said that. This young man doesn't blurt out anything typically, but he was even caught off guard by her beauty. And she was mortified that he saw her without her bonnet on when she initially turned around. Mortified. And she's caught off guard by what he says too, because I don't think she's ever heard that before. Not towards her, and not with that level of truth. So both of them are kind of like, what just happened? He spoke when he never speaks, and she heard what she's never heard. How does this change things? And I see them go and sit down in the shade. They're a little speechless. I don't think they know what to do with this, but at least there's obviously an acknowledgement here. I think he's pretty sure that she probably thinks he's cute too. I don't think he's ever had an issue with being thought he was cute. He was a handsome young man, so, you know, if she thought he was cute, that didn't go against his personal belief. So, but here's this acknowledgement right off the bat, that they're both actually attracted to each other. They both know it. It's been spoken to some degree now, and I really get that it can just, their relationship can now blossom clear beyond friendship pretty quickly now, even. And it just, yeah, even their conversation there under the, whatever, little shelter thing was so much deeper, you know, because they were really starting to get to know each other. And I already said their conversations flowed really well as it was. They were very comfortable with each other and talking, but now this just opened up the door for so much deeper levels of sharing, including one of the conversations. Actually, this was actually before we even changed anything. I get that one of the conversations was his brothers, and she was warning him that if they don't shape up, something like that might happen. He's like, "Yeah, I know. I wish they would do more too. I don't understand them because I actually like giving to everybody, and I need to work. You know, I got to do something other than sit around and drink." So that was already a conversation they had. But in general, though, now they can talk about their own interests, and he can talk about what's important to him. You get that he didn't have, well, his brothers could care less about him or his ideas or his thoughts. He was just their little, I don't want to say stooge, but basically, "Hey, go get some more beer. Hey," you know, and they didn't want to hear what he had to say about important topics. That was for them to decide. He was just supposed to go along with whatever they said. That's how it was. And here now, especially now, I mean, he was already feeling this way the first time as far as their friendship, but now he's got somebody that truly respects him and thinks his ideas are important. And this wasn't about, "Oh, she thinks I'm cute." Now, yeah, I'm sure that helped, but no, that wasn't what was important to him. What was important to him is that she actually truly, valued him and his thoughts and his words to speak up. She was encouraging him to. So now, over time, and the time is getting much shorter now, I'm clear that it's not taking months for them to kind of develop whatever. No, this is like, he's out there every day now. See, that whole back and forth stuff before, do I like her, don't I like her, I don't know, I don't want my brothers, that didn't happen. Now, he goes out there whether he thinks his brothers are watching or not. And, you know, he just doesn't care that much anymore. Not that he doesn't care at all, but when they do finally say, hey, why are you out there so much? You know? Okay. The whole, you know, the moo, the cow references as she went by, before he would just like stand back and allow that to happen. But he's starting to get a voice. So now that they've actually expressed this to each other and they're getting closer and closer, or maybe they already are kind of crossing over into boyfriend-girlfriend territory, hold on, they're showing me something. Okay, this is an important piece, very important piece. Okay. This might have even been on the very first day that they had their deep conversation. He said, why do you wear that bonnet so much? Why are you hiding? You're gorgeous, something like that. And I can't, do they want me to know the details about why? I think it has something to do with her childhood. And her cheeks tend to be really rosy anyway. Maybe she's got rosacea or whatever that is that makes your skin a little more red. Because I really saw, and it may not just be from the sun, right? Because she's very light complected. It could be like something like rosacea, where, whatever. Maybe that is it. That she had always been embarrassed and worn from a very young age a bonnet to cover her face. So once he explained, you know, why do you wear that? You shouldn't. Whatever, you're beautiful. Why are you hiding, you know? She stopped wearing that bonnet completely. Unless maybe she was out in the field in the sun and needed the protection from the sun. Let's just take that back. For practicality reasons, she would wear it. But when it wasn't necessary, she actually was walking through camp. In fact, I'm getting that, I don't know if everybody even knew that she was already a member of the colony. They'd never seen her face, unless you actually were talking directly to her and had some sort of interaction. All you saw was this lady with this bonnet all the time, so they're probably like, oh, who's this new lady in the community? What happened to that lady with the bonnet that was always out in the field? She's gone. Something like that. So yes, because now when she's walking by, I see she's got her hair down. She's got her hair down, no, nothing over her face. And you also have to get, because I'm getting right now, is that she's walking with so much more confidence too. Because she feels good about herself. She's got a young man that she's really pretty much head over heels for at this point, and he seems to be with her. And he thinks she's beautiful, so she is. I mean, is it totally dependent on him? No, but he helped her see that she was. Let's just say that. So she's walking with confidence. So now with all that information, let's see what happens now when she walks by. Oh, interesting. I don't see this stuff coming. Okay. Whether they realize she is the same girl that they've been harassing all this time or not, several of them now think she's attractive. And instead of the cow noises and stuff, now you get the kind of calls like, woo woo baby, you know, the whistles, you know, that kind of stuff. The construction site stuff, right? Supposedly, that's all stereotypical, but. And now, he's not liking that. Now she actually doesn't, I don't think she minds it that much, because getting, even if it's negative attention in that way too, it's still, you know, it's not bothering her. It's bothering him. And he actually stands up and tells him to knock that crap off. Ooh, what's your problem, you know? And he actually tells him, that's my girlfriend you're talking about. Everybody's like, what? So that better stop. I mean, he's not a coward anymore. He is not a coward anymore. He is standing up, even if he was, you know, he's not standing up because all of a sudden they think she's pretty, because it doesn't matter what they think. He now will defend her no matter what. And he does. And they're like, I don't know, they're pretty much, but the way he stood up and the way he whatever, none of them argued with him. And maybe over time, since they were starting to get closer, maybe he had become more vocal in his family group. So this may not be like the first time he stood up and said something, but when he did this time, they listened. And they weren't making fun of him. And it was clear that they weren't going to be doing that again. It was just like everybody got it. In that one split second, they all got in line with, you respect her and you respect me. Actually, it was about respect. Both ways. Both ways. He deserved respect too. And I don't get that they ever made fun of him, you know, or behind his back even necessarily talked about him or the girl. Something shifted in that. And so after that, and they're continuing on with their relationship, getting to know each other, spending a lot of time out there in the field, but not just talking and being boyfriend, girlfriend. They're contributing. They're, in fact, you know, energetically, because this dynamic is lifting the energy of the entire colony. I'm telling you, their crops are going to be extra good this season. Energy really does impact how well plants grow, things like that. Oh, they're going to have an amazing harvest, okay? Just by virtue of their love and respect for each other out there. So the last major thing that I see that's about to change is he knows, Dash knows, that they're on the verge of getting kicked out. That he and his brothers are on the verge of being kicked out. And if he doesn't course correct or do something here, they will be told to go. Now, I mean, he might not realize whether or not he can stay, but he knows the rest of them are going to get kicked out. And as idiotic as they can be, sometimes he doesn't want them to have to leave, if at all possible. So he gives them a lecture not too long after he mans up and tells them just that. You guys, you realize this is actually the best place we could have ever ended up, is what I'm just going to tell you what he's saying to them. You know, it doesn't get any easier than this, and these people are decent people, and they deserve to have people with them that are putting in as much work as they are, and we're not. I wouldn't blame them right now if they came in and kicked us all out, because we absolutely deserve to get kicked out. And if that's what you want, I can't stop you. But you know what? I finally got a good woman. I'm probably going to marry her. Something along those lines, right? I'm not leaving. I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to be able to stay. I hope you make the same choice, because there's a lot of available good women here. But if you ever decide to grow up, you could actually marry one of these women's. Boy, I can't even talk. One of these women. These are available, decent women that could be good wives. You won't have that choice much longer. So, I've already decided to stay. He committed to staying. with or without them. Again, daring to stand up to his brothers, daring to do things on his own, make his own choices. This is big. And they heard him. Now, if there were 10 of them total, including him, I'm getting that 6 of them actually really took that to heart, put some real thought into it. And those were probably not the hardcore problematic ones, but they were definitely following along suit with those others. They actually chose to contribute. They chose to start doing things, not just sitting around the fire drinking all day and laughing at everybody that goes through. But for 4 of them, yeah, they were asked to leave, and only those 4 were asked to leave because the others did course correct enough. But now, so they were probably still upset and ranting on their way out. Y'all stupid idiot people, whatever they were saying. But now 7 of their kin still lived in that community. And even if that night they went off and they got drunk around a campfire, even if they wanted to go burn fields, their brothers lived there now. They didn't go back and destroy anything. So this shifts everything, obviously, in that community. Not only does it get rid of the real problem ones, but the lift in energy there by especially the twin flame connection that was blossoming. It was changing everything. Instead of her seeing him, because remember, would have been that night after those 4 had been expelled that fire would have started. Instead, she saw when those people came and he chose to stay and he chose to be with her. And several of his brothers actually did the same. And she knew, he was sharing with her whatever was going on. So she knew that he had been talking to them and had actually helped 6 of them get out of that negative rut. She was very proud of him. Proud of him. No conversation of coward in there at all. And he was so proud of himself. Yeah, he had probably batted the word coward around in his head for many years, being connected to those guys. But he finally found his voice, and boy, did he. And now at least those 6 that stayed, well, even gained the respect of the 4 that left. I really get that they even saw him in a new light. Even though they didn't change their ways, they listened too. They didn't make fun of him, at least. There was a respect there that wasn't there, at least the first time. So, just trying to see as they're gone, as the energy shifts, I get at least 3 of his brothers are going to marry some of the women in that camp and going to be able to have their family experience there. And the ones that don't, at least they're contributing, they're doing what they need to be there. I'm just getting that it was already a fairly festive energy in this colony before. I guess just got it stepped up tenfold. The level of happiness, the level of prosperity overall. And when people are happy and prosperous, they tend to give even more to the community. So they were, like for instance, some of them made like blankets maybe, or some other things that could actually be even sold to the general store. So there was like the opportunity when they had excess, for example, harvests. Well, let's sell what's left to the store. So as they have excess, they have the opportunity to upgrade what they already have and or expand more. But either way, it's growth, it's prosperity, and it's coming from happiness. And obviously living in that kind of environment, you know you're taken care of by all these other people. Nobody's going to let you just drown. Everybody's going to try to help each other as much as possible. When you have that kind of support, when you're not worried, remember, Envy was alone, working her butt off in that small town because she had no support. She had to worry about being homeless every day of her life because she was just like 1 or 2 days away from that if she couldn't work. Like many people, especially right now in our current society, people are having to worry at that level. But man, having a community like that, so there are self-sustaining communities that have popped up in different parts of the world over time, and some of them are probably more successful than others. But I get that this is a model, maybe the model, especially now with this higher level version of it. In fact, I just get that with the new vibration that's coming in with this, it's like people like those guys when the lower level 4 at least would have probably never been able to even make it in there. Not because they were stopped at the gate for being bad guys or whatever. Just vibrationally, there's just no way they could have lived there. They wouldn't have even been drawn to go there. So really it becomes a vibration thing. So now let's see if this impacts things on the higher level. I feel like this is actually going to become a model used, I won't say around the world at this point, 800 years later, that it's been implemented in many different places now. Cooperative living of some sort, that's just the word that came to me, where people are just giving, at minimum, as much as they take, but especially when it's a great environment, you end up giving more just because, well, one, you probably have more to give, and also just you want to contribute to your community, support however you can. So it's just a win-win for everybody involved. And then that can be overlaid on the entire globe. That's what I'm getting. The idea of a cooperative planet community where countries can give to each other, especially when they have surplus, and just make sure that nobody gets left behind. Nobody starves. Got way too much starvation on this planet. But just in general, the vibration of the entire planet, if we could implement these basic ideas of cooperative living. Okay, now I'm starting to feel some energy around this. I'm getting that one initial community got up to over 500 people before it actually split into two purposefully, so that because they were running out of room basically where they were at with the resources that were there, and were able to duplicate this many times and not lose any of that amazing energy. They expanded so much. So this, let's say France is the beginning place of this 800 years ago, but at this point it's around the world. I'm sorry, I'm getting energy now. This is starting to rewrite, even though I haven't put it officially in place, but I'm just declaring this and speaking this is starting to shift things. So, okay, actually I'm gonna formally rewrite it right now. That is flipping 800 years ago. And now the new timeline is in place. Respect. Respect. It's a big part of that. Respect for ourselves and respect for others. And that's what's really the key components probably of any cooperative living situation. If you don't have that, if you don't think of others as much as you think for yourself, if there's not balance there, and I'm not even saying that, you know, if you give too much and not take enough, that's a problem too. But it's a balance of give and take. And that's related to respect. That's the only way it really works. That is the only way it really works. So, okay, now I'm really starting to feel the energy come in because we did change that 800 years ago. Cooperative living. That's from 2 people living in one space all the way up to nations, planets. Now we have a template. Maybe the best template so far to utilize to create such amazing, it's not even just living circumstances, the physicalness of it, the vibration of all these people feeling the same, putting in the same amount of effort. All these things just amplify and lift the communities and the planet. I'm still getting a lot of energy on this. So this is the energy that's lifting and helping take us through the 7/7/2020 portal, an ascension gate, another level of ascension. We're ready for cooperative living, apparently, cooperative existing. Whether we live in the same household or we're clear across the planet from somebody, we respect them as much as we respect ourselves. We go through life in that level of intentionality, and we contribute equally and take equally. Peace. Festivities. That's what I kept seeing in that group. Because they had so much leisure time too. They weren't working hard. Because everybody was taken care of. Or that was a result of everybody contributing. Nobody was worn out. Nobody was going hungry. Everybody got to partake in the positive things that were going on there. And it was time for that to happen on the planet itself. Still feeling the energy come in on that. So that's it. It has been formally rewritten, and still feeling pretty a lot of energy flowing through. If you liked, shared, or well, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm also going to post that short highlights video below here. I will record that next, and they'll both be up today, hopefully within a few hours. So thank you so much for going along the ride with me, and until next time, peace and joy.